1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
Oh, crack of the bat. We are in the midst of baseball again. We are enjoying baseball. We're wagering on baseball. We are setting our sights on baseball past, present, and future. Celebrating 1935, just a magnificent year. I can't tell you how many times I've shared this story in the last 3 months. It is Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
Charles, yeah.
Hold on a second. Did you say we're betting on baseball?
Well, yeah,
I'm betting
the collective.
on
The collective.
But you're on the same page because if I win my bet, it's going to spill over to everyone around.
I've been betting on you for the last 4 years.
Yes, you have been. Yeah. So when I come up, everybody's coming up. Everybody I know is coming up.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, Oakland A's. Just to put it on record, Oakland A's to win the division this year. If you want a solid long shot bet. I know it seems really long of a long shot, but the A's I think are gonna have the chance to do something miraculous.
Yeah.
Let's just say it like that.
Yeah.
And it's
all right. So it's been said. It's on record.
Today it's August 1st right now.
You put a bet in on the A's at the start of the season though.
Yes, I had a bet on the A's at the beginning of the year. I had a bet on the A's last year too.
And you just doubled down.
I had a bet on the record on the team last year too, and I mentioned on the podcast last year. I had a bet on the A's last year. The problem was,
are you like that guy with the Lions and the Super Bowl tattoo he updates every year?
No,
not quite.
No, but the thing is that everybody knows I've been talking about this new discovery I have with baseball analytics.
Yeah.
And the Oakland A's, I put the money on last year. They ended up having an absolutely horrendous record last year, but it doesn't diminish what what I see in that team. Because last year I can't control what which players they use in the field, and I can't control the managerial strategy, or can I control when a team says, "Oh, we're not even going to try for this year. Let's trade away our players," and such like that. So, last year the A's they had all these like sort of veterans that they signed just to patch the holes on their team, and to keep just to have enough guys in the field that were competent to play baseball where the rookies developed. And the rookies that I saw, the young guys I saw, never really got a chance to play the whole full year last year. So this year they are, and this year now they are starting to come of age, and they're all starting to get used to playing in the major leagues, and they're starting to they're going to become right now they're the best kept secret, but I think that they're going to be by the end of the year the team that is going to be like the Cinderella story of the entire season.
So that's a little bit of baseball present and baseball future.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just interesting. I mentioned I went. You said, "What did I do for my birthday?" I enjoyed a day at the ballpark.
Sunday
with my lovely
great.
bride.
Yeah.
Colleen and I went out to the ballpark. It was funny because we were supposed to go to like a lunch, right? And my stepson Colin was going to come and his girlfriend, and she ended up having other plans, so it was going to be 3 of us. And then Colin is like, we messaged him that morning. He's like, he goes, I got some free Tiger tickets. I'm gonna go to a Tiger game. And we're like, Colleen and I had been talking about, we like going to all the teams. We like seeing the Lions, the Red Wings, the Pistons. We like going to like, just for the social aspect of it. And, I know nothing about sports, but I just love the social aspect. I love the city. I love, doing it. So we were talking about we got to do a game before the season's over. And then, so Colin backed out on lunch, and it was a gorgeous Sunday. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous day. Actually, it was too bloody hot. And I was like, well, let's go to a game.
Yeah.
I punched up the tickets, and they were, on StubHub, they were reasonable. So we got some cheap tickets in a nice section, section 125, right behind the visitor dugout.
Okay, cool.
10 rows up behind the visitors dugout.
Great, that's a great spot.
Yeah. A couple foul ball. That's total foul ball territory.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And then Dr. Brad from Animal Talk. He has his season tickets. We were in 127. He was in 125. So I don't know, or vice versa. But yeah, so he's like right there, and he came over and talked to us. That was cool. But then we got to the park, and we're like, hey, Colin, we decided to go to the game too. What section you were in? He's like 125. We're like, shut up. So are we.
It's right there. Yeah. That's awesome.
So one of his fraternity brothers does sales there. He does VIP ticket sales. And so he does, it's like he meets and greets and gets people to their suites and gets them their little bags, with all the tchotchkes in it. He gets them into their suites, and the people that buy out the suites, and then he schmoozes them and like tries to sell them season tickets and stuff. So that's kind of his gig. But he has a couple seats at the games, and he just rations them out to his fraternity brothers. And this time it was Colin's turn, but it was the same section we were in. It was funny. So I was like, dude, we're not stalking you, I swear to God. So,
no,
the park was full.
Oh yeah,
they're not performing well, at all, not even close.
No,
but the park was full. It was fun, and that's why we just love the social aspect of it. But
it's ambiance, baseball ambiance,
I actually ended up talking about the Champions story to 2 or 3 people there, and then over the last 3 months, I can't even tell you how many times I've told the Champions story.
It's addictive, man.
It's I
mean, it's you can't because it's once it's part of your understanding of the way things were and currently are, and like the sort of timeline from then till now, it just becomes part of your dialogue for. I mean, it's not like you're trying to host a trivia night everywhere you go. You're just once and you're just it becomes part of your just your daily understanding of the way things are, and so it just you can't. I mean, that's what I mean. Like you can't not talk about it once you know how. I mean, it's like it's the greatest story of all time, greatest sports story of all time. Why wouldn't you talk about it?
And then it was we were there's a bunch of new podcasts recording here at the Podcast Your Voice studios on the border of Berkeley and Southfield, just north of 12 on Greenfield. If you're looking to do a podcast, great place to do it.
Yeah, James.
But Podcast Your Voice, but a bunch of new shows that I'm helping. I help people. I coach people through launching their shows, and it's there's like a bunch of dudes, and it's like, oh, so what are your podcasts about? It's like, oh, this is a great space. Well, thanks. And I go, well, because I have 3 shows, I need a place to do them because my wife kicked me out of the house for podcasting. And they're like, oh, what is it about? And it's like, the City of Champions. And so I've told those guys a story. So I've just been telling the story a lot, and it reinvigorated me over the last couple of months and sharing the stories. And I got to tell you, Eddie Tolan is without a doubt one of my favorite stories to recount.
But this you saying that reinforces why this story is so important, I think, or one of the aspects that makes it so interesting or cool, important, I guess whatever word you want to pick, because for me, when I first started this project, what interested me was the idea that the Tigers, Lions, and Red Wings had won their first championships in the same season. I never knew that. And I wanted to dive in. So that's like the lighthouse beacon.
Yeah,
that's what draws you into the story is this incredible fact that these 3 teams won in their first championships in the same season. That's what draws you in. But once you've been drawn in, you realize that there's this entire galaxy of stars. It's a galaxy of stories and people and teams and athletes, all this different stuff.
Yeah,
and you would have never had any reason to go into that world if not for that initial beacon that drew you in. That's what I'm saying. That's what's really interesting about it. And what book, I got these books here. What reason would I have ever written a book and included, you're going to fill a book with Eddie Tolan information? I don't know. I mean, but the thing is, who would have bought it?
Right.
Who's going to buy it?
Yeah.
Maybe 5 copies. I mean, who knows? Hardly any.
Yeah.
And so when you include him with the full weight of this season,
this galaxy,
he's now part of this larger whole, and thus incredibly relevant, and that's what leads to exposure for these people and athletes and of this forgotten era.
And I love when I share the story, I start talking to people and they get a little bit excited about it, and I'm like, I love when people get excited about it. And so I want to say thanks to everybody who's excited about it and watch these on Facebook or YouTube. and then listen to the audio podcast where all podcasts are sold. But yeah, do us a favor if you could, put a little thumbs up, or
like,
even
subscribe,
better,
share it for us right now.
even better, leave a comment,
always gotta
leave a
remind
comment
people.
and collect or like and subscribe. Yeah, do all those things, all those podcast things, and all the podcast places. We'd appreciate that.
Thumbs up, share it, and that. Yeah. So
and then, but we're back to baseball, right? We started with the Tigers.
I think we're headed to after this. I think we're gonna do a long form history of the Tigers. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah,
because we're already leading up and we're talking about the development of their minor leagues. We'll touch on some of the early stuff. We won't go too super deep into it. Like Ty Cobb and like the early, like the 1887 Wolverines and that, we'll go into that stuff, and then we'll move forward and we'll get back. We'll kind of come right back to this point because it's a great point to leave off of after today.
And I got to tell you, because you were like, oh, I don't know, but Champions Day is April 18th.
Yeah.
Every year, Champions Day. It was designated in 1936 after the magnificent year. The magnificent 9 months of these championships, with a big celebration and a plaque signed by all 48 governors at the time and the president. And this big President of Champions Day, it kind of faded a bit. And Mayor Bing, love that guy, he brought it back.
Yeah.
So April 18th. And coming up the next April 18th in 2025 here, it is going to be the 90th anniversary, right? It's going to be
you did the math on it. I don't know.
Years,
yeah,
right?
You did the math on it, Jamie.
35 to 25. So
yeah,
90.
It makes, you're right.
And so I thought, and I was saying it'd be really cool to get the Stanley Cup here. And you and I argue about
We've had an argument.
And you're like, it's not our cup.
Yeah.
But the names are on the cup. So anyway, the ball's in motion, right? Requests are being made because I want to get all the trophies, right? I want to get that.
Well, they have the Teddy Oak Trophy in the Lions archives.
The Lions,
which is the Lions trophy from the time.
The Lion, I want to get the Lions trophy.
That alone.
I want to get all of them, right? The Tigers World Series trophies.
They don't have one from 35. It was only the rings.
I know, but get the other trophies there. And the Pistons have a bunch of trophies. And so get all of those trophies. If we get the Harmsworth trophy,
that's all I need. I don't even need the other ones.
There's a replica. I'm pretty sure
I think it's at
in Belle Isle.
Not Belle Isle. I believe it's at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club.
At the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club?
I think so, yeah.
A replica of the Harmsworth?
I think so, yeah.
If we can, I know there's a replica in the city.
I would come out just for that.
So
just for that.
I want to get all these trophies in one room. The Pistons are in. So I got a yes from the Pistons. Yeah, the Pistons are in.
Nice.
So the Pistons said, we'll bring them, because the trophies, they've been in the museum, the Pistons trophies, because they had the Pistons are celebrating this year as the Pistons City of Champions year. That's their marketing pitch for the year. And so there was the Detroit Historical Museum where we normally host the Champions Day celebration. They have a special a new champions, City of Champions display.
We ought to see if we should do it at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. Talk to them. Yeah. They have a bowling alley, man. They're a sporting club. They might be interested in doing it.
But here's the thing. So the trophies have been there since January, and the actually it just ended. The display just ended, and the trophies were leaving now. But we're talking to the trophy lady, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we'll bring them back for that for sure. Cool. That would be great."
Heck yeah.
So the Pistons, she goes, as long as they're not committed for something else. So let's work the dates and find the date, because we don't have a day because Champions Day falls on April 18th is Good Friday in 2025, okay. And so it's like, a couple of the curators at the museum are like, well, let's open it up. People are off of work, and then Tracy, the leader of it, she's kind of religious, and she's like, well, I'm not gonna be there, and I'm like, I'm usually like, down.
I don't know if Good Friday, if you're not allowed to do anything, it's not like it's like the Sabbath or anything. I don't think. I'm Catholic myself, but I don't think
you're not supposed to do anything.
You're not supposed to do anything on Good Friday. Nothing.
No. Between 12 and 3 or nada.
Oh, really? Okay.
No TV, no radio.
It's been a long time
eating,
since I've actually looked at the rules, I guess.
Yeah.
Really?
So yeah, after 3 o'clock, but I mean it's a daytime. But anyway, but that Saturday might be, the 19th, might be a good day because people have it's a holiday weekend, they might have time. I don't know. So, but they're not locked into a date or the weekend before, the weekend after, but somewhere around there, my goal is to get all of those trophies in one room at one
Well,
time.
you've been on this thing, man, so I wouldn't put it past you, Jamie. You're hammering.
I
away
got a
this.
connection up at the Hockey Hall of Fame. And from what I understand, though, they take the cup. They'll take like some of the older bands off because it would just be too
massive,
too big, right? So they take some of the older bands off, or some of the bands off. I don't know, older or whatever. They take some of the bands off and they flatten them out, and they're on display there with the cup. So as the bands go around, so as the years go on. So if that's the case, it's like if we get the 35 band, the band with the 35 on it.
No, that band's on the original cup.
Okay.
It's on the original cup.
Yeah, the one because there's an original.
The original cup is just the bowl.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The original cup was just a bowl. It was a silver bowl. And then they affixed that to the top of a wood base.
Yeah, and that was probably about the size of that was probably the size of a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah,
and the new one is more like almost like a garbage can.
Well, the bowl's a punch bowl, and then I've seen it. It's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and it's got a pedestal, and then the bowl's affixed to the top.
Right.
And then, but that's where the Red Wings at 35 Red Wings is on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I've looked at the names at the museum.
Yeah. So we'll try to we'll get as authentic as possible. It might be the traveling cup that the players all get to take to their hometown.
Yeah.
That still be cool as hell. So whatever one we get, and then the all the World Series trophies. Try to get a 35 ring in there.
Yeah.
And then the Pistons trophies, and then any Lions trophies. I don't know, because it was
Teddy Oak trophy is the one you want from that. They got it in the Lions archives. What do they do with it? They never bring that out.
I know. Who wants to see that? We do.
Yeah, they don't even know they probably have it. It's like the Indiana Jones where they locked the Ark of the Covenant in that box, and then they're like, they're like, what are you gonna do with it? And he goes, our top people are gonna handle it. And then he goes, who are? And the guy goes, our top people.
Yeah, there's a custodian pushing
it
into
into a million other crates. That's probably it's like the Lions. They got it in their archives. It's in a stack. They're like, what are you talking about now? You're like the original championship trophy, the Teddy Oak, and they're like, I don't know. Do we have? I'm like, yes, you do. It's in a box.
So, but anyway, so that's my mission, is to get all those trophies in one room at one time.
Yeah, that's exceptional.
And I don't know, charge people to take a picture with it and donate it to
us,
Champions Awareness.
Us, we can survive. Some
I don't know.
Of us are,
or the historical
some of
museum,
us are more financially not as well as others.
But no, something, I don't know, or just take pictures. Let people take pictures with them. What the hell, So I just think it would be a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, you're working on it, man. I wouldn't put it past you to get this something done, man.
So, but like I said, we're going to the history, and we're talking about the foundations of the scoutings.
Yeah, we were talking about
and we said that without Del Baker, 35 would not have happened, right?
He's just another component. It's tough to say, like, if this guy wasn't there, then it wouldn't happen. If this, he was there, and he was just a component. And I look at all these players and all the stuff we do is like, it's like a giant tapestry, like every time that you weave another image or a little story into this giant tapestry of a story, the more that, like, when you go and you scan it and you understand it, the more that you understand like how amazing it was. And just like all these people and all their stories and all these things, their combined total, when you see it all, it's like amazing. It gets more, the full sum total of the story gets more interesting and more amazing the bigger that tapestry gets. That's the way I see it.
All right.
When you first see it, it's like three big stories on a giant rug, that's amazing. But the more you weave in, the more it's like that, like they call it the bio tapestry. And they have that whole thing laid out where there's like this massive story on been sewn into a rug, and you're like, my God, it's like a book, it's this entire thing. So Del Baker's a huge part of it, and I think he's got a really interesting story to tell, and he's a perfect this is where we're going to leave off with the Ivory Hunters.
Okay.
And so he's a perfect sort of capstone to it. We've already gone across all these the scouts and the people that scouting directors and all these people, and I think that Del Baker's a perfect person to leave off of, because he's a transition from the minor leagues to the major leagues.
Okay.
And he's got a story that I think that very few minor league, I don't think I've ever heard of any minor league manager with this same thing. And just to give a little bit of a background, I have very little notes on this, but Del Baker, he's got all kinds of information on the internet you can search for more precision details. But he was a Detroit Tiger in early his career.
Okay.
And so I'll start even further back because he's got a really interesting childhood too. So he grew up out in Oregon. And his family had this huge piece of land. And so his dad made him and his brothers carved a baseball field out of this huge chunk of land for him and his brothers to play on.
Little field of dreams.
Yeah, it's like he had like 4 or 5 brothers. They all played on this field. They had like their own, like almost like a whole team of their own guys. And so according to the story I have in here, they had this. Someone would come from like another town and say, "Hey, we want to play a game in your field. We got 9 guys.
We want to play the Joneses.
Yeah, we want to play the Bakers.
The Bakers,
right?
Del
Baker,
Bakers,
right?
yeah.
So we want to play the Bakers, and so they had a hunting horn on their porch, like next to the field or whatever, and they would blow this horn. Yeah, they would blow this hunting horn.
Game on.
And it meant game on. So all their people that were normally, they would suit up, because they didn't have a full team, but the guys that would also come and join them to play on that field would come running to come play a game of baseball. And they would have this, that the other team was already on their way or whatever.
That's wild.
And so that's how they had like their own sand lot basically. And they, and then he would play for other little teams nearby or whatever. And somehow or another, his name started to get out there a little bit. And eventually, like, he played a little bit in the minor leagues. And then he got signed by the Tigers. And he played for the Tigers for 3 years. He was a backup catcher to their – is a name that we're going to mention. And when we start doing the long-form history of the Tigers, they had a catcher named Oscar Stenage. And Del Baker was a backup to him.
Okay.
And so he was a Tiger backup catcher. So he played with Ty Cobb, 1914, 1915, 1916. Del Baker, he was on the same team as Ty Cobb. And so obviously that's where his initial roots were with the Detroit Tigers was as this catcher. And so he obviously made enough of an impression that when the time came for his, he went back to the minors. I think he kind of surfed around different teams and different organizations for a little while. But eventually when it was just, he became a manager, and it was with the Tigers that he returned, and he, as a minor league, especially as this farm system was, being developed, he was their guy in Beaumont. Mm-hmm. He was there in Beaumont, of course, like as we said from the last show, you had Bob Coleman, and you did not have, again, we didn't have single A, double A, triple A.
Right.
They had Class A, Class B, and Class C. And so, it is actually in reverse order. So it actually ascended to Class A. So Class A was like one step away from the majors. B was the next step, and C was the lowest. Yeah. And so to show you the regard that the Tigers had for him as far as his intelligence and his capability as like, developing young players and all this, the Tigers had him as their Class A manager at Beaumont, Texas, which was their top team. And they had Bob Coleman as their Class B manager. And so I guess we're going to begin with really the first major aspect of his time in Beaumont, which was the 1932 Beaumont Exporters. That was the name of the Tigers Class A team. And so when you're looking at the Tigers, when you're looking at the ascendancy of the Tigers, in 1934. The story that I tell, and the story that's told in the books, and the story that is like the most sort of, which is the story, right? Yeah. Is that Mickey Cochran arrives with the Tigers in late 1933. Yeah. And, when Mickey Cochran, him and Goose Goslin are the only two really new Tigers on this team. And then in Mickey's he's like, "Hey Mickey, how's the Tigers gonna do this year?" And he says in spring training, "We're going World Series."
Yeah, hell yeah.
And they're like, "Well, what are you talking about, Mickey? You have the same crap team as Bucky Harris had for the last 5 years. Like, nope. What makes you think that you're gonna go anywhere with this squad? Just because, you're good. We know you're awesome.
Because I got faith."
Exactly, his faith in this. But here's the thing: there was a little bit more to it than that. If you plumb down a little deeper, that's where it comes up with the 1932 Beaumont Exporters. Because the 1932 Beaumont Exporters were an absolutely special group of players.
Yeah.
And we have a team photo here. This is a team photo of the 1930s. This is one of my favorite images. I have this hanging on my wall at home. I literally took this picture with my cell phone off of the wall. This picture I have at home. Yeah. It's not that big. It's like the size of a postcard.
Sure.
But when I got it back in the day, I saw this on eBay and I'm like, this is coming home with me. There's very few pieces. There's very few things. I mean, I have quite a few pieces of like collectible stuff, but this is one of my absolute favorite pieces because this captures an absolute moment in time. Mm-hmm. And so you can see at the bottom of the screen, all of the different the players that were on this team. If you they're all there. So if you just skip ahead to the next slide, and then we'll jump back to this because the next one doesn't really have the names on it. But the next slide where they're like ISO players, because
okay.
Plus, I spent like an hour and a half doing this today, so I want to make sure we get it. But can you blow that back up?
Yeah.
So what it shows right here, these are all these players that are ISO'd in this picture.
Yeah.
These are all guys who contributed to the 1934 and 35 Tigers.
All right, fair play. So if you're listening to the audio podcast, again, so it's almost always worth a trip to the video podcast because there's some cool visuals that we throw up
this
here.
Is an exceptional one
to go. And I like what you did with this, highlighting the.
These are all the guys who were contributors to this. To the 34 and 35 teams, and these are not just randoms; these are heavy hitters. Mm-hmm. So you got just to list out a few. You got first of all in the dead center in the top are Hank Greenberg and Schoolboy Rowe.
Oh my God!
Both of the studs of both years.
Those are my boys.
The centerpieces of the entire story are both on that team. Hank Greenberg was the 1932 in the league they played in was the Texas League.
I want to import these exporters.
Yeah, so Hank Greenberg was the MVP of that 1932 Texas League season.
Yeah.
Hank Greenberg was, and Schoolboy Rowe was the beyond any shadow of a doubt the outstanding pitcher of that year. And so besides that, you have Pete Fox on the very far right-hand corner. Mm-hmm. He's their starting right fielder for the Tigers in 1934, 35, and all this. Pete Fox is there. And then bottom left-hand corner, sitting on the ground, you have JoJo White, who is another. He played center field. He would rotate in and out with G Walker as their starting center fielder. He's a major factor in this season. And so then you have just looking at this where they're sitting at, just in the poses there. But they're like these guys are across the board. So. You have a couple different sort of pictures. Luke Hamlin's there, who was he didn't start, like he didn't have a ton of different starts, but he had a couple of really important ones in 1935.
Newsom, that's a familiar name. Is that a different Newsom?
I believe that's highlighted. Yeah, I believe it. Well, yeah, there's a couple different Newsoms. There's a Bobo Newsom who was huge, but this guy was a shortstop, so I don't think it's the same one.
All right.
And then you had Joe Sullivan, who's up there, who's in the top left-hand corner.
Yeah.
And there was this one, we'll get into him a little more detail, but
sure.
Sullivan was like, there was this one stretch where like none of their Tigers pitchers were pitching particularly well. And they brought up Joe Sullivan and he had like two really good starts to win him a couple games. So they're all contributing. You had Flea Clifton, who of course was a guy who was substitute. We didn't really get into them too much, but he was a guy, because we haven't got to the playoffs yet, but he was a star in the playoffs. When Hank Greenberg went down in the 1935 World Series, it was Flea Clifton that replaced him at first base. So these guys are all keys. And then, of course, and sitting there in the dress shirt with the tie on is Del Baker.
Darryl Baker.
Yes. And so what's interesting is this 1932 Beaumont Exporters team, they would win. They would just dominate this Texas League season. They had 100 wins in this season. And they won the 1932 Texas League championship.
All right.
And so they were all
these exporters.
Yes, this was this amazing team.
All right.
And so I want to read a quote before I go too much further, because I got a couple really fantastic quotes. Right.
All right.
So the quotes are like one of my favorite things about. There's so many quotes about Del Baker, but there's a couple that are just really cool. So first of all, I want to start. The first quote I have is for when Schoolboy Rowe first arrives in Beaumont. Okay. Schoolboy Rowe, when he was going to Beaumont, he was actually ticketed to go to Class B with Bob Coleman in Evansville.
Uh-huh.
And so, but because he was so young, he was a super young guy, and he'd played a little bit of like barnstorming games, but he'd never been in like Oregon at like Class B or Class A or whatever. He's brand new, he's raw bone rookie to this.
All right.
And so he comes to Beaumont just passing through on his way from Arkansas to he's going. They sent him to Del Baker and Beaumont just to have to have a look at him. And Del Baker's like, he's not going to Evansville.
Yeah.
He's standing right here with me.
Yeah.
He's like, this guy is one of the greatest pitchers I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
He's not leaving Beaumont. He's standing right here with me. So I'm gonna. This is the quote. This is the quote for that moment when Del Baker first identifies that this is Schoolboy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then also his influence on Schoolboy Rowe and what Schoolboy had to learn with Del Baker. Like Del Baker tells you, they say what, like, he's amazing, but he's got some weaknesses. And Del Baker identified them and said, this is what we're going to work on with you before you go to the majors, which is coming soon. Right. So this is the quote. This is the story. And it comes from the story. It's a little bit of a long quote, but it's a good one, I think. So this is a Bud Shaver, this Detroit Times sports editor. So this is a big dog writing this, and August 25th, 1934. All right. So here it is right here. So Schoolboy Rowe was marked for baseball greatness the day he walked into the ballpark at Beaumont, Texas in the spring of 1932. Del Baker's heart leaped when he saw him striding along. Del was manager of the Beaumont Club then. Here, walking toward him was a baseball manager's dream of the perfect pitching physique. If only he could pitch. He could. Baker found that out the moment he crouched behind the plate in his first warm-up of this young giant. That pitching motion was flawless. There was a blurry fuzz in the fastball that zipped across the plate. He had a curve, a real curve, one that broke sharply down and away from the batter. But best of all, this amazing youngster had control, rarest of pitching arts. Baker tried him out. With bated breath, he shifted his catching mitt, changing the target for each pitch. Each time, fastball or curve, the ball thudded into the heart of the mitt without Del moving it. Once the boy threw him up a pitch which was hard to catch. The ball seemed to waver in its flight, a blurry ball which lacked direction and substance. Del knew what that was. He straightened up off his hunches and shook his head. Knuckler, don't throw that. You don't need it, and it will hurt your arm. Rowe didn't throw it again until last season when Bucky Harris told him to throw it now and then just to show batters that he had it.
Mm-hmm.
Cochran doesn't let him throw it. So Cochran doesn't let him throw it. Bucky Harris let him throw it, and Cochran doesn't let him throw it. Baker squatted down his hawks again. Throw me a change of pace, a changeup, he coaxed. Rowe's brow nodded in perplexity. What's a change of pace, he asked. Baker told him how to start with the same whirling, energetic motion that he would throw a fastball or a curve, showed him how to pull the string, put the brakes on the pitch before the batter was aware of what was happening. Schoolboy was interested, fascinated. I think I can do that, he announced confidently. He could. After a half dozen pitches, he had a better change of pace than many veteran pitchers have today. Just as a little aside, to change of pace, a change-up for those that are not don't understand.
Yeah.
So a change-up is when you use this, you're throwing a fastball, and what you do is you basically use a couple extra fingers on the ball. It's the easiest way to do it, or use more drag on the ball. So when you throw it, the ball goes slow. It looks like a fastball, but you've taken like 5 to 10 miles an hour off of the pitch.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a slow ball basically.
All right.
So you have a great fastball in the pit, and the batter's, just trying to time your fastball.
Sure.
And suddenly the ball comes in way slower. And so usually what you see is batters that swing like in front of the baseball because they make crap contact with it because they're expecting a pitch that of a different velocity. So that's what he's trying to teach Schoolie here. So that was the spring of 1932, my friends, 2 short years ago. Today, Schoolboy has the best change of pace in baseball. That is what has made him Rowe, the Magnificent. A 22-year-old pitcher already on his way to enduring greatness, perhaps to become the greatest pitcher the game has ever before laid. The game has known before he lays his glove. Baker thinks that barring accidents, he can't miss. He thought so then when he finished his first warm-up with the boy who had never pitched a professional game in his life. Del knew that he was looking at the best pitching prospect of his career. That is why Baker did a couple things which were incomprehensible to his associates at the time. Del was nursing that gleam of hope in secret. Ball players, especially managers in the minor leagues, are jealous of their judgment. Del did not want to crow about this find and then have to eat his words. Besides, Rowe was not sent to him as a player. Rowe was on the list for Evansville Club, not Beaumont. Eddie Goosetree, who also had a vision of greatness when he signed the Rawbone high school boy on the back of a fire truck, ordained him for Evansville in the 3I League. Rowe was sent to Baker at Beaumont because he was handy and because Baker was the best man to give this untrained kid some pointers before he made his professional debut. Baker had another idea after he caught Rowe the first time. Kid, he told Rowe earnestly, when you want to throw, come to me. I'll always have time to work you out. I don't want anyone else catching you. In that way, Baker could personally supervise the unfolding of this pitching genius, guard against him overworking. Schoolboy wanted to throw most of the time, and it wasn't good for him. His young strength was unplumbed. Schoolboy didn't know the limits of it. Then Baker went to Jack Zellers, Tiger coach, who was the overseer of the young sprouts of the Tiger farms of the West. Evansville is not going to get this kid Rowe, announced Baker. He's going to stay right here in Beaumont and pitch for me. He's not ready for a Class B league. He's not ready for a Class A league, objected Zellers. This kid is right out of high school. He's never pitched a professional game in his life. He's ready for Class A, and he won't be here for long, retorted Baker. Leave him here with me. So he was like, so Del Baker was like, this is my fine now.
Yeah.
You guys sign him, which is awesome. Well done.
Yeah.
But from here on out, leave him with me. Like he's like, I'm gonna work this kid.
That's
I'm gonna
be
get him
magic in a minute.
I'm gonna turn this kid. So this is Del. That's right there. Del Baker was the guy that supervised the development of Schoolboy Rowe.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? That I would count that right there as a very important contribution to the Detroit Tigers in 1934-35.
Serious cog in the wheel of the party train that moved on in.
Yes. So it's a huge contribution just right there.
Yeah.
So anyway, so now I want to zip ahead. There's one more quote I want to read. There's actually one more after this, but there's a good one right here that because we're going to move on from Beaumont here shortly. But I've got this fantastic quote, which is actually by Hank Greenberg. And Hank Greenberg, this is a story from his book it's an excerpt from Hank Greenberg, The Story of My Life. And this is a story about what it was like in Beaumont.
Yeah.
In Beaumont.
But these exporters are fun.
They're great. They love themselves. They're a group of young sprouts down in Texas who are winning championships and they're coming up together. So I'm saying is this picture right here, and if you're just listening, you're not seeing it. I isolated. There's 7 players on this 1932 Beaumont team, and we listed off already a core group. You had a starting right fielder, a guy who was a platoon center fielder, Hank Greenberg, Schoolboy Rowe. You had all these guys on the same team with a couple other Flea Clifton, of course, he was their utility man through the entire 34 and 35 season. So so basically what this says here is it shows that it wasn't just this miraculous turnaround by Mickey Cochran,
right?
That this was a sustainable development for the Tigers, which was these young players that they had in Beaumont who just won a championship together were all coming to the major leagues together. And that's where we're going to get to here in a second.
Right.
But I want to talk about the final little excerpt here is, I love telling stories that this is relevant here. Right. And it's an amazing little story that Hank Greenberg tells, and it's relevant now. And so I want to tell it. So I want to read this quote. So it's not as long as the last one, but it's a decent length here. So this is Hank Greenberg's own story. Beaumont was hot as blazes, and we only played day games there. It is to make matters worse. Someone came up with the idea of having red uniforms. So we sweated in these heavy, coarse horse blankets for uniforms while playing in temperatures of 100 degrees. But the joy of playing and feeling that we were getting a little closer to the major leagues was uppermost in our minds. We were a young group. Notice that we were a young group. They were a group of players coming up together. There was this group of winners and legends in their own time that were dominant,
grinding it out.
Yeah, dominant guys who knew that they were headed to the majors, and this was just a stopping ground.
The penance we got to do to get there.
Yes, but they knew that they were headed. They knew they were good.
Yeah,
and they knew they won this championship. They're like, we were a young group. He's talking about them as this group. So when this is what it's showing is that it was a surprise to everybody else. But with this young group merged with this legendary catcher of Mickey Cochran, who knew how to take these guys, plus a couple other guys they had there, Charlie Gehringer, who was already there, already a legend in his own time, superstar. But that's why it appeared so abrupt. That's why it appeared so out of nowhere. But the reality was, it was a fusing of this amazing 1932 talented group of young minor leaguers with the Mickey Cochran and Charlie Gehringer and a couple other guys already there, like Tommy Bridges, who was going to come into his own. It was the merging of all of this together which did this. It wasn't just out of nowhere. It wasn't just like me, Mickey Cochran, I think, saw this, But what I'm saying is this is more to to that basic premise of a story that was just like a flip that would switch. Suddenly all these guys who were crap one year suddenly just had the best year of their life.
Yeah.
And then it was all over after that. No, this was an organization that was on the rise. And that's, it leads credence to why Frank Navin was like, everybody's like, Frank, you just had a heart attack. You're like, the team stinks. Your attendance is terrible. You need to sell the team. He's like, I'm going all in on Mickey Cochran because I just need one piece to bring it all together, right?
Yeah,
They're like, what are you seeing, Frank? He's like, Frank Naiman's got to be like, my Beaumont team just won the championship with this dominant group of players.
Right.
If they can somehow
now
do
I got
it,
7 of those cats up here.
They're up here.
Ready to swing.
If I can get a veteran up here to bring this group of guys together with some of the other stars. We got Charlie Gehringer at second base, the best second baseman all of baseball. And then we already got another couple pieces like Tommy Bridges and this and that. If we can get somebody to bring it together for me, then that's all I need. And that's what I'm saying is it lends credence to what Frank Navin and probably Frank Navin alone. I mean, of course his right-hand man knew this, but all the other people on the outside are going, Frank, you just had a heart attack. You had the worst record in, like one of the worst teams in baseball. Your attendance is awful, all this. But Frank's like, no, man, I'm close. I'm so close. We're about to build something here. And there's this evidence of what his mentality was. We got this group of awesome youngsters, right? Yeah. So anyways, to continue on. But the joy of playing and feeling that we were getting a little closer to the major leagues was uppermost in our minds. We were a young group. We had only 1 or 2 older fellows to give us a little balance, and most of us were prospects and players assigned by the Detroit organization, and we're looking forward to climbing up the ladder and making the major league club. They were like, we're going to the majors.
Yeah,
that was their mind. The Texas League had 8 teams: Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Tyler, Longview, Shreveport, Galveston, and Beaumont. Dallas was the only one you could really call a city. Houston wasn't much, and Fort Worth was just a cow town. But some of the smaller towns struck it rich with oil, and at times the big money literally flowed onto the field. Fans would throw out silver dollars if you made a good play or a good effort, even if you were with the visiting team. Now, $4 or $5 was a lot of money at the time. You could eat for 5 days with $5. The players would really scramble around for the money. It was fun to see. So imagine these things. I've heard this story from past stories too. That's why this is the early baseball, when these players would do something great in the field and the fans would throw silver dollars out towards them. I mean, how in a silver dollar day is nothing to laugh at, man. A silver dollar today, those things are worth, you can't even find those things for less than $12, $13 a piece for the same ones they were throwing to them back in that time. They were Walking Liberty silver dollars. I take that back. A silver dollar is back then, because those are half dollars I just mentioned. The silver dollars, they had Liberty. They have Liberty's head on them. They're awesome, and you cannot get them today for less than like $28 to $29 a piece. Right. So that still has it, because they're made of silver. They have the same spending power as they did back then. That's why he's saying that you could eat for 5 days with $5. So $5 times $30 a piece, that's $150. That's what he's saying. That's why he's using that particular line. You could eat for 5 days, change that five silver dollars to $150. Now all of a sudden you understand what he's saying. That if people are flinging silver dollars on the field, the players are going after them, chasing them down. Of course they are. It's $30, man. That's a big deal. So the Texas League was an outstanding minor league. If you were good enough in that league, you could step right into the majors. Many players had done it. Dizzy Dean was one, and Paul Dean, Paul Daringer, and Ducky Medwick played against me there. It was renowned as the Pitchers League, and I soon found out why. Any pitcher who could stand up under the heat of cities like Beaumont and Dallas could stand up anywhere. We'd play night games at Galveston and Houston, and you could see the heat coming off the field in shimmering waves. Saltwater mosquitoes would arrive, and we'd sit and swat them all through the games. In those days, the visiting ball club had no showers. We'd have to go back to our hotel to change after the game. If we were in, say, Houston, we'd go back to the Rice Hotel, peel off our red flannel uniforms, and hang them up on the tips of those slow swirling ceiling fans. Those cramped little rooms soon smelled like the locker room of a gym. We didn't know any better, I guess. We were on our way to the majors. That's all we knew, all we cared about. Schoolboy Rowe showed up that year, 1932, and what a phenomenon he was. He never played in another minor league, and there he was starting out in Class A. He was 22 years old, almost 6'5", over 200 pounds, and one of the proudest human beings who ever came out of Waco, Texas, or his other hometown, El Dorado, Arkansas. I wouldn't say that Schoolboy Rowe attained that terrific pride all through his career in baseball, but in that first year, Beaumont, he was nothing but pride and arm. He wasn't satisfied when he won 6 in a row for us. And when his streak got up to around 10 or 12, he was telling everyone that he might never stop, might win every start for the rest of the year. We came into Houston with Schoolboy's streak intact, 10 or 12 straight wins for Houston.
Man.
Schoolboy came in as a star, man. We came into Houston with Schoolboy's streak intact, and when the last half of the 9th inning came around, the game was tied. Houston got a man on third with 1 out, and our infield moved in. I made a mental note to cut off the man at the plate, but when a ground ball was hit hard to me, I decided to get the batter first, and by the time I threw home, the winning run had scored. What? Well, of course it was a bonehead play. And after I'd made it and ended Schoolboy's win streak, my only interest was in getting the hell off the field as quickly as possible. As I started across the mound, I saw Rowe was still standing there. Come on, Schoolboy, I said. The ball game's over. He was muttering, I ain't leaving. I ain't going to go. They can't beat Schoolboy Rowe on a play like that. Schoolboy don't lose games like that. Come on, Schoolboy, I said, grabbing him by the arm, but he just stood there. And then I could see the tears beginning to slide on his face. This game ain't over, he blubbered. It can't be over. I was dying of embarrassment. I felt bad enough blowing the game, and here's our pitcher refusing to leave the mound and crying his head off while these hometown fans from Houston are starting to walk around us and stare at Schoolboy. I finally dragged him off the field. Funny thing was, a year later in Washington, I hit the longest home run of my career to help Schoolboy win his 16th straight game and tie an American League record. So I figure we're even for what I did to him in Houston. So that game where Schoolboy won his own game.
Yeah.
Well, Schoolboy won his own game.
Yeah.
That 16th straight win, Schoolboy won his own game with a base hit, right?
Yeah.
But Greenberg was the one that tied it up before he hit the walk-off for himself.
Nice.
So that's why he's saying I hit the longest home run of my career to help him win that game and to tie the all-time record. So anyways, this paints this picture again of this team in Beaumont, which is essential. This is what's essential to know about this story, why it's so important to dive in.
Yeah.
These guys, that this was this special group of guys. They knew they were stars. They knew they're headed to the majors. They had a blast in Beaumont, living, driving in those crappy buses.
Oh, and just the
the
description of those uniforms. Because in museums you see the vintage uniforms,
yeah,
and they look like horse blankets.
Yeah, they look terrible.
They're just awful. It's like, okay, they were that awful when they were wearing them, and they knew they were that awful.
Yeah.
Because they just look thick and heavy, and I can imagine it's been like hot as Hades here in Detroit.
Yeah, and it wasn't like there were just some different species of people that didn't know they were crappy at the
Yeah,
time.
no,
That's what I
they
love
knew.
about Hank Greenberg.
Yeah.
Knew it. He goes, they were horse blankets.
Yeah.
He said coarse horse blankets.
Yeah.
So Hank knew. He's like, those things were awful, and they were different than even the major league uniforms you see look kind of rough. But he's comparing them like he didn't mention they were like that my whole career. No, he was specifically referring to those ones they had in Beaumont, going, those things were horse blankets, man.
So Dell was out there coordinating things.
Yeah, so Dell won a championship with this team, right?
For Belmont.
Yes.
And then where did he go?
So this is an interesting part of the story with Dell Baker. So 1930. So we talked.
He moved up with these guys.
Yeah. So we talked about in the last show how Bob Coleman, he moved up to the Tigers at the end of 1932 because the Evansville team had folded, right?
Yeah.
So this was they had relocated and then they folded at the end of it disbanded July 15th. So he gets moved up. So Bob Coleman goes up to the Tigers in 1932 to finish up, the season with them. So what's interesting is that in 1933, when all these players get brought up to the Tigers, they all get brought up to the Tigers. And so guess who gets promoted with them? Dell Baker.
Right on.
Dell goes up to the majors with the group.
This guy's doing something. Let's bring him over here.
Let's bring him up with the talent.
Let's bring him over here.
So they promoted the manager with them, right?
Awesome.
So so anyway, and then Bob Coleman went from the Tigers down to Beaumont. So Bob Coleman became the Beaumont manager.
Fair play.
And then Dell Baker became the third base coach for the Tigers. And so he got promoted with all these guys. So, we'll talk a little more about the individual details of players, but the basic concept is that, the thing to sort of know is that these guys, this is their first year in the major leagues in 1933, right? So the season that is like Frank Navin's nightmare.
Yeah.
Right. They're terrible. Bucky Harris is this player. He's a former third baseman named Bucky Harris. And this is Bucky Harris's 5th year. The Tigers have been terrible for 4 years. He goes into 33. They're not any better than this. Their big signing was they had a first baseman that they signed named Harry Davis, who was like sort of like a veteran star. and they sign Harry Davis to a fairly large salary. So Hank Greenberg comes up and doesn't get to play. He doesn't get to play because they just had this veteran free agent signing who's a big deal, and Hank doesn't even get to play. He spends most of 1933 just at Belle Isle trying to stay in shape, playing sandlot ball. And there's a point where he's complaining. He goes into Naven's office and is like, man, I want to be able to play. You know, am I supposed to do anything? I might as well be down in Beaumont if I'm not ready. I mean, he actually went into his office. I have a quote here about it. We'll get into more of that with Hank Greenberg when we get to his story, when we do the long form with the Tigers. But what's interesting to know is that Hank Greenberg Greenberg had a major deficiency in his game. He could hit, and like when he hit the ball, it stayed gone. Like, I mean, Hank Greenberg could hit some tape measure shots, but Hank Greenberg's major problem was his defense. He was absolutely awful at defense. His defense was terrible. So I have another quick quote. I think it's the last one I got, but it shows once again the impact of Del Baker with Hank Greenberg here, because basically all Hank did was practice. That's why I say what I'm talking about. One of these days, like there is going to come a point where I have my own baseball team and I'm developing players and I'm building players, and bringing in this new concept into baseball. And one of the examples that I cite, that the one aspect of a player that can be definitively improved without a shadow of a doubt is his ability to play defense, the ability to master a position. And any time that there's ever any dispute on that fact, because currently a lot of times in major leagues they'll be like, oh, that guy, you know, he's a defensive liability. Like a perfect example is this guy named Ben Ogilvy. Ben Ogilvy was a player. He actually was on the Tigers. He got drafted by the Red Sox, played with the Tigers, and he ended up he finally didn't settle into any team until he got to the Brewers. And he was this fantastic hitter. And they constantly told him, like, your defense is a liability. Your defense is a liability. And they were telling this all the time. And they were like platooning him all the time. And like he never showed for these major league teams, never showed any examples of how good he was, because they're always like, well, let's try to DH him, let's platoon him, he's not a good defender and whatever. Yeah. And so he never really got a chance to demonstrate what he could do. He never got a chance to really even improve or anything like this, because they always were telling him that. They like typecast him as a defensive liability. And once one team typecast you that, then it basically follows you around the rest of your career, no matter how much you improve. They won't even use their own eyes to see any kind of improvement. But Hank Greenberg demonstrates that it is a fallacy, because he went from not even being able to catch a pop fly to basically mastering the position. And here's the quote that talks about how he did it. And of course, Del Baker's influence on him doing it. So this comes from Eldon Walker in Sleeper Cars and Flannel Uniforms. He says, we knew how hard it had been for him to become a great player. Talking about Hank Greenberg. It didn't come as naturally to him as it did to most of the other stars. He had those big flat feet and was a little clumsy, a bit awkward. He had to work and work. Nobody worked harder at becoming a better baseball player than Hank Greenberg. Hank came up from the minors in 1933 and replaced a fellow by the name of Harry Davis at first base. It says Hank was the most valuable player in the Texas League in 1932, but I assure you that it wasn't because of anything he did on the field. Meaning on defense. He couldn't catch a pop fly when he first came up with the Tigers. Every time he would try to catch a pop fly, he would throw his head back. Those pop flies gave him fits. Del Baker was the manager of Beaumont when Hank led that team to the Texas League title, and he later came to the Tigers as a coach. Hank went to the ballpark at 9 o'clock every morning, and Baker hit him pop flies with a fungo bat. I bet Baker hit Hank Greenberg 1 million pop flies. Hank was determined to perfect the art of catching a pop fly, and he worked so hard that he got to the point where he could catch those things in his jock strap. Hank made himself into probably the best first baseman in the league. He was a big target, so tall with such long arms. I still have one of those big, long mitts he made for himself. So he had these custom big mitts.
Oh, wow.
But it says right there, another aspect, Hank, he built himself into the best fielding defensive first baseman in the league. Yeah. And he went from not even being able to catch a pop fly.
Right.
And Del Baker was there. He said I bet he hit him 1 million pop flies. I mean, is that dramatic? I don't know, but he's trying to convey an idea. He's like, I bet he hit him 1 million. Like he's saying, like, it was so many. Yeah. It's in that
they were out working it.
Every day at 9 a.m. hitting them pop flies every day. And so the question is, how far back. So Eldon Ocker is talking about when he first got to the Tigers in 1933 and potentially even 1934 and even beyond as he kept on working his way. But how far did that go back with Del Baker with Beaumont? Do you think that Hank Greenberg can't catch a pop fly in Beaumont? And Del Baker's like, that's fine. Yeah, no worries, right? No worries. And I'm just going to leave him to it. And then when he gets to the Tigers, Del suddenly starts working with them. Yeah. I completely, disagree with that.
Right.
So it's obvious that Del Baker had to have been working with Hank is all the way back, with Beaumont, and even before, so Del was probably working with him for like 2 years or more every single day. So Ocker's because Eldon Ocker wasn't with them in Beaumont.
Right.
He wasn't with Ocker was with Bob Coleman in 33 with Beaumont. He was in Beaumont, but he was in 33 the year after this.
Yeah.
And so he didn't see Hank working with Del in 32. So what I'm saying is that it's almost a matter of fact that if Dell's working like with Hank in 33 like that, he most certainly was working with Hank in 1932. So the crap version that Ocker saw of the Hank Greenberg's defense in 33, right? Or 34, because Ocker didn't get to the majors till 34. So the crap version of defender that Ocker saw in 34, right? That was dramatically improved from the 2 years previous.
Yeah.
So how bad was
he
from
the get-go?
Yeah. So and Del Baker was there to hit those, to be training Schoolboy Rowe and to be developing Hank's defense, two majorly important aspects. Those are the two biggest stars besides Mickey Cochran. Those are the two biggest stars of the Tigers in 34 and 35. And Del has obviously demonstrated his influence on both players as a developer of talent.
Yeah.
And as we'll see here in a second, the next phase of his actual in-game performance, an incredibly valuable third base coach because one of the things that he is known for is that he is an elite sign stealer. Del Baker standing at third base and he's reading pitchers and tipping off his hitters to what the pitchers are going to throw. And he's it was so well known,
right,
that there was a pitcher that made a comment because Hank Greenberg was holding out for a bigger contract. I think it was 1936. And when they were, there was a newspaper reporter who got a quote. He got a quote from I think it was a Yankee pitcher. And he said, well, if Hank Greenberg is getting a raise for his new contract, they should give Del Baker one too, because he's the one helping Hank out, tipping him all these pitches, and Hank's smoking balls and Del Baker, is feeding them pitches. Hank doesn't need much help, but if he gets a little help, it's superstar level. Yeah. So it was actually one of the after the Tigers won the World Series, it was an open conversation. And it would be a few years, but Hank Greenberg would eventually shoot it down because the talk was growing. It's like anything does, how it escalates. And they're like, there was rumors of people saying, well, the only reason Hank Greenberg is good is because Del Baker is doing that. And Hank's like, hold on a second, let's nip this in the bud. He actually had to address it and say, he gave me a few pitches, sure, but it wasn't like, he wasn't there for every single step my entire career. Like I was hitting before I knew Del Baker, I was hitting after him and stuff. So but anyways, it was that much of a thing. Yeah, that there was another team's pitcher commenting on it.
People noticed,
and so imagine now just to take that well-known fact now, this concept factor this into Del Baker's story. So what you have, we can show there's Del at third, but check out this magic eye we got.
Oh, I like this.
Del Baker had a magic eye, man. Like, look that's out of a Rotogravure newspaper. They took a magic eye photo of Del Baker at third base.
Calling the different things.
Yeah, at third, right? And so he had it. So he was important enough that they got him in a magic eye photo. So anyways, I was so happy when I first saw it. I was like, I can't believe they have a magic eye of their third base coach. Yes. Yeah. But it shows you how big of a deal he was, man. He was huge. And so imagine now you're a pitcher on another team. You're a pitcher on another team, and you got Del Baker standing over there at third base who is just studying you. Right. Because when you say stealing signs or reading a pitcher, what you're looking for is the pitcher, or the catcher or whatever you can read.
Yeah.
You're looking for something that
where he puts his foot, where he puts his hand, where what his fingers look like. It's
and to tip away what he's about to do, right?
Yeah.
And so you just have
so you
Dell
tell
over
your
there.
boy and
So even if he's not reading anything, you look over to third base and you see Dell just staring at you. He's just like, what? I don't see anything. You're fine. I don't see anything.
Throw that
No,
ball.
throw
the ball.
Throw that. Yeah.
Give it your best shot.
So what I'm saying is that is a weapon.
Yeah.
When every single team you face has got their pitcher is looking over at third and they see in your guy going,
damn it.
Come on, Hank, you can do it. You got this, hit this guy. That's a deke. That's a deke you can pull out of your bag too and be hey, Hank, hey, Hank. And you're like doing some hand signal. You might not even know the pitcher's sign, but you're psyching him out. Yes, exactly.
That's his business.
That's what I'm saying. That's a weapon. That is a factor in these games. And so
gotta get in their noodle with that.
And so that's Dell. So this is this guy, man. Dell. So we love Dell. So anyways, so this is the role. This is the aspect of of Dell Baker. And like I say, so at the end of 1933, when Dell first comes up with the Tigers, so he's Bucky Harris's third base coach. And then Bucky Harris resigns before the season is over because he's like, this is just it's a disaster. Like these guys, they're not playing, when they first, all these young guys, they're not playing well. They're all new to the majors and they didn't fuse like they did in 32 under Bucky or under Dell Baker. And so, Hank's not even playing. How are they supposed to come together? Like their guys aren't even playing. Schoolboy is, pitching in like pitching in small starts or whatever. They didn't have that same moxie that they did when they came up through Beaumont. And so that's why when Frank Navin is watching this happen going, this is my super squad, my super kids coming up and they're not doing the damage I thought they're going to do.
Right.
We need something to bring it together. Right. And that's when he goes out and gets Mickey Cochran. But what's so interesting is that usually in baseball, when there's a new manager coming in, he brings his own squad of people. Yeah. He brings his own coaches. He brings his own talent guys or whatever, because it's his name on the line. He wants to make sure he's got his people there. He thinks he knows best. But in this case, Dell, who was there, Dell finishes up the year as the manager of the Tigers because Bucky Harrison resigned. So Dell, so 1933 was the first. This was the first year that Dell Baker was an actual manager of a major league team, and he finished off the year 1933 as the manager. Now, when Mickey comes on as a player manager, what's interesting is that you would think that there'd be this like power, like you're coming in as a new manager of the team, and the most recent manager of the team. You'd think that it's like, okay, you go away, go back to the minors or go anywhere but here because this is my team now. I'm the manager. But that's not what happened. Mickey kept him on as the third base coach, recognizing his value to the team, potentially recognizing the idea that, and I think there's an article that speaks to this concept that that Dell was the guy that could help Mickey extract the best out of these young players.
Well, because when you're a player manager,
yes,
you got to play.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have your head in the game. So you need
having a guy like Dell on the side, absolutely.
Hell yeah.
So there's a bunch of factors that comes in with that, and especially I think is a big one is that it wasn't just Mickey that maximized the value of these players. That you have 1934 is the first year that Hank Greenberg is a full-time player. It's the first year that these youngsters are going out there as a group and knowing that they're all starters, that Schoolboy is an anchor in the rotation now, that these guys are all so it was basically Beaumont. That Beaumont team is now fusing with one of the greatest catchers who's ever played the game, in a veteran outfielder like Schoolboy or like Goose Goslin, and with Tommy Bridges, who's already there, and with the greatest second baseman of his era, Charlie Gehringer. They're fusing with that talent. It was Mickey that brought this group together.
Yeah.
So with the story of Dell Baker, with the story of this Beaumont team from 1932, I think it paints a far better. And you see what this 1934-35 Tiger team was far better when this is factored into the story than just Mickey Cochran got there and like, oh my God, Mickey changed everything. It was so great. You see that their pieces were there, that Mickey was the person that fused them together, the veterans with this exceptional group of young players. It was Mickey that brought it all together. And so it's not to take anything, it's not to say, well, now the full thing. It wasn't just Mickey that just snapped his fingers and made it happen. The pieces were there, but it shows the magic of Mickey, and I think even better, because it says he sees these guys. And so when Mickey made his statement in spring training in 1934, and he goes, "We're going to the World Series," it wasn't just the rantings of a madman that was just so confident in his own ability. That's not it.
No.
He saw that he had the pieces. He saw that he had this exceptional team, this group of guys that if he could bring them together, they had just as good of a chance as anybody. And that's what his strategy was in 34 and of course in 35 was to fuse this outstanding group of young players together with these core guys. And that's why, because he recognized that, it makes absolutely every sense in the world why you would want Del Baker to stay and not say, you know what, this is a power struggle. It's my team. I don't want you out of here.
Right,
He's like, I want you here to help, to take grounders from Hank, to take pop flies from Hank. You maximize their talent in Beaumont in 1932, and I want you here to maximize their talent with me in 34. That's how it was. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like, so yeah, to try to tell the story separate of Del Baker, I think is to not, certainly not understand the full picture of what this Tiger team was in 1934.
Del Baker, it's an important cog in the machine.
Another part of the tapestry being woven to show this story in its full, in its full glory and its full complexity.
So, but for the whole champions story, for the three teams, the Tigers, then the Lions, and then the Red Wings. So really the Tigers blazed the trail.
Absolutely.
And then the Lions came in support of it because it was like, oh, hey, we could use a football team to sell some.
The Lions were the pivot.
And then the Red Wings were like, holy crap, we got to perform.
They were the biggest beneficiaries.
We got to perform, we got to.
All eyes were on them because the story was big now. You had Joe Louis, you had the Tigers, you had the Lions who just won their championship, which was like a bonus.
And this is
now all of a sudden, all eyes are on the Red Wings because the Red Wings moved into first place on the day the Lions won their first championship. Yeah. So now it's like any with a pair of eyes. I even have it on the first book. In the first book, I have the cover of each newspaper when the team won their championship. So you have the bold print of the Tigers. Tigers win World Series. And then the second paper, there wasn't even that big of a headline with the Lions.
Yeah.
The Lions just have a little byline. It just says Lions win title on speed and better judgment. It's a little byline. It's not that big, but they're on the cover.
Yeah.
They're like, we're on the cover. We won a championship. We got a front page. I don't even think that was from the front page of the main newspaper. I think it was just the sports section.
Front page of the sports section.
Like, we made this front page of the sports section. They're all happy. But what's interesting is on that Lions paper, that's where you really see it. As marginalized as they were.
Right.
What's amazing about that paper, which is the second newspaper, like if you're looking at the first book, it has the first paper says Tigers win world title. And then the second newspaper, it just says, it's kind of right in the middle of the thing with the Lions player in the center. It says Lions win title on speed and better judgment. But if you look below that, there's a picture of Joe Louis.
Yeah.
And on that day, December 15th, 1935, that the Lions win the championship, they have a picture of Joe that says, Joe Louis wins AP award for most outstanding athlete of the year.
Right,
and then also on that same page, it said there's a Red Wings section that says Red Wings move into first place.
Okay.
And so that day was majorly significant.
That's a pivotal day.
That's why I call the Lions the pivot. Because anyone with a pair of eyes, they all knew the Tigers won the World Series.
Yeah.
They all knew Joe was the biggest star in the world.
Yeah.
And then you have the Lions win. And then with a pair of eyes, you're going, hold on a second. Let me do the math in my hands here. You got Tigers, Joe Louis, Lions win the title, and the Red Wings are in first place. That's what all of a sudden the whole new story was born on that day, which was, can the Red Wings do it too?
Yeah.
And that's when, so now the whole city's looking at the Red Wings, who are not just pursuing some abstract, Canadian trophy. They're in pursuit of, the larger glory of the city. And that's what brought the Red Wing to the Detroit fans to the Red Wings in droves for the first time ever. And under that spotlight, that they won their first championship with all eyes on them. That's what the spectacular exclamation point of the story. And then, of course, their minor league team won their championship the next day after that. So
I just love how all the pieces come together, and no one's investigated this before. No one has ever
never
pieced this together in
Yes.
this way. I'm glad we're stitching this.
I am too.
This
I am
quilt
too.
together.
And just a little postscript on Del Baker.
Yeah.
A couple little interesting little tidbits here.
Yeah,
Sort of a postscript on him, because the way that the rest of his career as a manager went,
Right.
kind of like in 33, where he managed at the end of the year for Bucky Harris. Dell was like sort of a fill-in guy.
Right.
So like Mickey continued to manage. He continued to but he at one point he had like a nervous breakdown. And then he would another year he got hit in the head with a pitch, which basically ruined his career. So Dell was always the guy that stepped in as their Tiger manager whenever there was an issue or Mickey went down or whatever it was.
Right.
And then he became their full-time manager for a few years. He took them to the 1940 World Series.
Okay.
And then the Tigers lost in 7 games to the Reds. And so, but right before World War II. But he had, I think he had like 5 games with Boston at some point, like later, like in the 1960s or something. But anyways, over the course, he was in baseball as a player or a manager for 50 years.
Whoa.
Dell was, yes.
Okay.
And so, but anyways, so in that sort of patchwork managerial career at least with the major leagues, his major league record, I couldn't believe this. I thought this was amazing. His 8-year career as a managerial career with the Tigers. So he managed right around 780 games. So his career record is 417 wins and 355 losses. So his winning percentage was 54%, which in managerial terms is very good. Anything above 500 is really good.
Yeah.
And so just to put it in comparison, Sparky Anderson, who had a 17-year career as a Tigers manager, obviously, twice as many years as a manager of the Tigers, but his winning percentage was 516. So Del Baker had a higher winning percentage than Sparky Anderson as a manager. On-off year with the Tigers. So just to put that in perspective, so this is a guy who, absolutely essential for the 34-35 Tigers. And you would start off saying, would they have won the year without it? That's a debate that could be had. You could have that debate to say, would the Tigers have been able to win the World Series without Del Baker? Who's to say? But the thing about it is, we never have to ask that question because Dell was there.
There it is.
Yes.
Yep. I love this story. Better all the time, man. All right, more to it. We're gonna deeper dives into the Tigers as we move forward, and deeper dives into more pieces of this story.
I think, we're gonna go into a deep, a long form version of the Tigers for the beginning of the next show. So,
all right, cool.
So if you're listening, you want
whatever you want to tell me, man. I love the story.
Yeah, no, well, we're gonna make you a Tiger expert on Tiger history because Tiger's got a fascinating story of their history. We're going to do a long form history, but I don't think we're going to spend like every week. Ty Cobb represents a major component. I don't think we're going to spend all day, like 50, like 6 months talking about Ty Cobb.
No,
he merits that amount of time. But we're going to do we're going to do a nice long stretch of Tiger history.
Cool.
So I think it'll be kind of a big deal for it.
Lots more to come. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all those podcast things in all the podcast places. Please, truly appreciate everybody who's rolled through us for this long on all these episodes. So thank you, Charles. Thank you.
My pleasure, Jamie. Thank you for always putting this thing together, man.
DetroitCityOfChampions.com and then Facebook, YouTube. Just Google Detroit City of Champions. We're there. Yeah. We're there for you.
Yeah. You have any questions, write in. We'd love to talk about.
Yep.
We'd love to hear people.
We'll do it all again
Yeah.
very, very soon. It's Detroit City of Champions, the podcast.